Have you ever met someone who walks into a storm of chaos and, yet, their calm is unshakable? Why do some people stay cool under pressure, while others break from a single glance or message? This isn't about being cold. It's about something far more powerful. The ability to control your inner world when the outer world is losing its mind. There are people, rare but real, who can walk into a room full of tension, insults, and pressure and remain completely centered, like a mountain standing firm in the middle of a raging storm. They don't flinch. Not from betrayal, not from disrespect, not from the chaos around them. And you wonder, how is that even possible? Let me tell you something most people never learn. True power isn't in your physical strength. It's not in how loud you speak or what title you carry. It's in your ability to stay grounded. When everything around you is trying to pull you off center. But here's the problem. Most people are living like puppets, constantly yanked by every little string. One message, one sarcastic tone, one unread text, and their mood is gone for the day. A delayed reply, they spiral, an eye roll from a stranger. They invent an entire drama, complete with plot twists and betrayal, all in their heads. That's the real tragedy. We think we're reacting to life, but what we're really reacting to is our past, our old wounds, our fear of being abandoned, ignored, unloved. The ancient Stoics understood this truth long before modern psychology gave it a name. As Epictetus said, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. In other words, no one is truly triggering you. You're triggering yourself on autopilot based on scripts written years ago. Here's what they never taught you in school. You can rewrite that code. You can take back the remote control. You can become mentally untouchable, not by shutting down your emotions, but by learning how to master them. This video isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about developing emotional intelligence. It's about psychological strength. And it's about the quiet, unshakable peace that comes when you've built boundaries strong enough to protect your inner world, no matter what storms rage outside. Because once you truly understand what's happening inside you, no one out there can control you again. There's a prison most people live in and never even realize they're trapped. This prison has no bars, no guards, no visible walls. It doesn't need them, because it lives inside your nervous system. It gets activated the moment someone disrespects you, ignores your message, or makes you feel less than. The name of that prison, reactivity, and the scariest part, you were trained to live inside it since childhood. From a young age, you were rewarded for being agreeable, for saying yes, for making others comfortable. You were punished emotionally, socially, when you said no, stayed silent, or didn't react the way people wanted. So what did you do? You learned to read the room before you read yourself. You began to look outward to figure out how you should feel inward. If someone praised you, you felt high. If they ignored you, you felt invisible. If someone got angry, you instantly assumed it was your fault. Slowly, quietly, your peace was stolen, and you didn't even notice. Your emotional life became programmable by anyone and anything. The traffic light, the unread message, the passive-aggressive comment, the silence from someone you care about, the raised eyebrow from a stranger at the gym, one flicker of outside disapproval, and your inner world was in chaos. But it doesn't have to be that way anymore. But once you realize you've been programmed to react, you also realize you can reprogram yourself. Because when the smallest trigger sets your entire nervous system on fire, that's not freedom. That's slavery disguised as a normal life. And the more reactive you are, the more drained you feel. Why? Because every emotional outburst costs energy. Every time you lash out, defend yourself, overthink, or spiral into panic, you're spending mental currency, and you're reinforcing one toxic belief: I'm not in control. Let's break down the cycle you've been trapped in maybe your whole life. Step 1. A trigger shows up. It could be anything: someone's tone, a silence, a glance, a message left unread. Step 2. Your brain instantly goes hunting for meaning. What does this say about me? Am I being rejected? Step 3. You attach a story to it. Usually, it's one you've repeated since childhood, rooted in fear, abandonment, or unworthiness. Step 4. You react on autopilot: anger, anxiety, defensiveness, sadness, withdrawal. Step 5. Then comes regret, overthinking, shame, and worst of all, reinforcement of the loop. You think you're responding to reality, but you're actually reacting to an unhealed version of yourself. As Carl Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So when someone criticizes you, even gently, you don't just hear their words. You hear the echoes of every time you were belittled, misunderstood, judged. You're not triggered by the person in front of you. You're triggered by the pain you never processed. That is the invisible prison, and millions are trapped in it unknowingly. They decorate its walls with distractions, comfort, achievement. They call it life. But deep down, they know something's not right. The Stoics rejected that kind of existence. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. They didn't see reactivity as a moral failure. They saw it as a lack of mental organization, the disconnection between awareness and emotion. So how do you escape? Not by becoming cold, not by pretending emotions don't exist, but by doing something most people avoid their entire lives: observe, not react. Watch your inner world like a scientist, not like a victim. Study your triggers, question your reflexes, interrupt the pattern before it becomes a storm, because every time you react automatically, you surrender your power. But every time you pause even for 1 second, you reclaim it, and in that 1 second of stillness between the trigger and the reaction, that's where your freedom lives. In the next chapter, we'll dive into why emotional reactivity isn't weakness, simply a lack of training, and how the Stoics practiced something most of us were never taught: rebuilding themselves from the inside out. Here's a truth we need to clear up right now. Just because you react emotionally doesn't mean you're weak. It just means no one ever taught you a different way. Because let's be honest, no one is born with emotional discipline. No child enters the world knowing how to pause before reacting, or how to question the stories running through their mind. We had to learn, or we didn't. Most of us were raised to perform, not to be present. We were trained to memorize answers, not to explore our chaos. We were rewarded for following rules, not for building awareness. So we stepped into adulthood with powerful minds, but no manual for how to use them. So when you panic, spiral, shut down, or explode, don't call yourself broken. You're not. You're simply running on outdated software written long ago, never updated. You learned how to speak. You learned how to walk. You even learned how to make money. But no one taught you how to pause. No one showed you how to protect your energy. No one explained how to tell the difference between truth and trauma. And certainly, no one taught you the most vital art of all: how to master yourself. Emotional intelligence isn't a personality trait. It's not something you're born with. It's something you train, so the next time you see someone calm under pressure, unaffected by drama, unbothered by chaos, don't assume they were just built different. They weren't. They were rebuilt deliberately. With discipline, we ended the last chapter with one truth. No one is born with emotional mastery, but some people choose to train for it, rather than let life control them. They're not different from you. They're not born with extra strength. They simply made a decision to be forged rather than pulled apart. They trained their minds the way a warrior sharpens his blade. They studied their inner world the way a Stoic studies virtue. And they built emotional strength quietly, moment by moment, through every test life threw at them. By choosing one thing, not to react. Because emotional intelligence is not passive. It's an active discipline practiced daily. It means learning how to carry the weight of pride, fear, and insecurity, without dropping it onto those around you. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And this kind of self-mastery, it's not glamorous, it's not viral, it often goes unnoticed. But it's the invisible line that separates those who are led by life from those who lead themselves through it. Pain is not a signal to react, it's a signal to pause and reflect. Here's the hard truth. Most of your emotional reactions have nothing to do with the present. They're not really about the person in front of you. They're not even about what just happened. They're about an unresolved version of you still living in the past. The 7-year-old who felt invisible. The teenager who was mocked for speaking their truth. The young adult who was wounded and never really healed. So when someone raises their voice, delays a reply, or questions your worth, your nervous system doesn't see a person, it sees a threat. It sees danger, and it reacts not to hurt anyone, but to protect you. That's not weakness. That's survival mode and autopilot. But survival mode was never meant to be your default. You were born to evolve, to rise into awareness, into clarity, into inner peace. Here's the good news. Every reaction is a chance to train. Every time you pause instead of explode. Every time you observe instead of absorb. Every time you feel the emotion without becoming the emotion, you're building a new neural pathway. You're upgrading your code. You're rewiring your mind towards self-mastery. You may not see the results instantly, but your nervous system does. And slowly, you stop being pulled by every storm. You stop being controlled by every trigger. You begin to feel grounded, calm, unshakable. Discipline over emotion is not suppression, it's liberation. Let's be clear, this isn't about bottling things up or pretending to be fine. It's about realizing that your reaction is a choice, not a compulsion. It's about saying, I will not let temporary chaos steal my permanent peace. You're not denying your emotions, you're directing them, and that is real emotional intelligence. That's what the Stoics lived for. They didn't preach indifference, they practiced clarity, because once you're clear on who you are, you don't need the world to validate you. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't owe every insult a response. You simply stand still with strength. In the next chapter, we'll uncover one of the most powerful Stoic insights. You're not reacting to life. You're reacting to the meaning you've assigned to it. And once you learn to challenge those meanings, no one, not even life itself, can trigger you again. You're not reacting to what happened. You're reacting to the story you told yourself about it. You think it was the comment that hurt. You think it was the silence that bothered you. You think it was the disrespect that shattered your peace. But here's the truth. It wasn't what they said. It was what you believed it meant. This is where most people stay stuck for life, reacting to shadows, illusions, and imagined meanings, as if they were absolute truths. A glance becomes a judgment. A delay becomes rejection. A neutral tone becomes passive aggression. And so, you stop living in the real world. You start living in your interpretation of it. A world shaped by old wounds, unresolved fears, and distorted beliefs. As Epictetus wrote, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. This isn't philosophy for the bookshelf. This is the mechanism that governs how you feel every single day, and it runs far deeper than you think. In the next part, we'll break down the mental spiral, how it forms, how it steals your peace, and how the Stoics learned to break free from it. In the last chapter, we saw that what hurts us isn't the event, it's the story we attach to it. And now, we're going to zoom in on how that story forms in real time. Imagine this: your friend doesn't reply for hours. Immediately, your thoughts spiral. They must be ignoring me. Emotion kicks in: anxiety, fear, resentment. And without realizing it, you react. You shut down. You become distant. Maybe you send a cold reply. Or maybe you don't reply at all. But wait. Pause right there. Was that really the truth? Or was it just a story your mind created to fill in the silence? Maybe they were busy. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they're dealing with something that has nothing to do with you. But your brain, wired by old wounds, interpreted the gap as rejection. So you didn't actually react to what happened. You reacted to what you believed it meant. That's the trap, and that trap is everywhere. Someone corrects you. You hear criticism. Someone frowns. You assume judgment. Someone forgets something. You feel invisible. This isn't emotional intelligence. This is emotional projection. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." So next time you feel deeply triggered, stop and ask, is this really about them? Or is this about something inside me that still hasn't healed? Your mind is not a mirror, it's a filter. It doesn't reflect reality. It distorts it through the lens of your past. If you were abandoned, you see distance as a threat. If you were criticized, you hear judgment in every sentence. If you were betrayed, you sense lies in every pause. This isn't your fault, it's your programming. But now, it's your responsibility, because until you examine that lens, you'll keep reacting to false threats. And you'll stay exhausted, spending your energy on battles that never existed. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And I'd add, the unexamined mind is a factory of unnecessary suffering. So how do we break this? With reframing your hidden superpower. Reframing doesn't mean pretending things are fine. It means choosing a perspective that sets you free. You can't always control what happens, but you can control the meaning you assign to it. That's your leverage. That's your freedom. Instead of, "They're judging me," you say, "They might just be lost in their own thoughts." Instead of, "They disrespected me," you ask, "Why does their opinion carry so much weight in my mind?" Instead of, "They ignored me," you say, "Maybe it's not about me. And even if it is, I can choose not to react emotionally." This is psychological freedom, the ability to interrupt the loop. And every time you reframe instead of react, you become a little less programmable. You think for yourself. You feel on your own terms. You rise above the emotional noise. here's the final truth. No one has ever made you feel anything. You did that through interpretation, and that's the good news. Because if you created the meaning, you can change it. You're not reacting to the present moment. You're reacting to the past that's still living inside you. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of your emotional pain isn't caused by what's happening now, it's caused by what's still unhealed within. You're not just reacting to people, you're reacting to patterns, to echoes, to emotional fingerprints left behind by moments you never fully processed. Let's say someone disagrees with you. On the surface, it's harmless, just another opinion, but your body tenses. You feel attacked, defensive, maybe even ashamed. Why? Because deep down, disagreement doesn't just mean they don't share my view. It feels like I'm being rejected. I'm not enough. That's not logic speaking. That's trauma running through your nervous system. You're not in a simple conversation. You're in a time machine. You've traveled back to every moment when your voice was shut down, every time someone told you that you were wrong, every moment that taught you you are only safe when you are accepted. That's the invisible war. And it's not happening out there. It's happening inside in the last part. We explored how much of what you react to isn't about the moment. It's about the past still echoing inside you. Now let's go even deeper. What if what you think is a trigger is actually a mirror? Millions of people are walking around every single day thinking that their triggers come from the outside. But here's the truth. What you call a trigger is often just a reflection, a mirror showing you something unresolved within yourself. Someone ignores you, you feel abandoned. Someone criticizes you, you feel worthless. Someone else succeeds, you feel like you're falling behind. But here's the part most people miss. The other person is not the problem. The problem is the meaning, the old emotional script their action activates within you. And this is where most people get stuck. Instead of turning inward, they try to control the world around them. Instead of confronting what's inside, they try to manipulate what's outside. They say, how do I stop people from triggering me? Instead of asking, why does this still trigger me? They run from discomfort instead of facing it. They silence pain instead of listening to it. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And one of the most common, absurd things we do is blame the outside world for the emotional storms that begin inside us. But what happens when you stop doing that? What happens when you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what inside me is letting this affect me so much? That's when the real shift begins. Because here's the hard truth. The past isn't gone. It's stored in your body, in your breath, in your muscle tension, in your posture, in your tone of voice. Modern neuroscience now confirms what the Stoics already knew. Emotional memories are not just mental, they're physical. A childhood filled with constant criticism. You'll feel attacked even during neutral feedback. L work begins. That's emotional intelligence at its highest level. It's not flashy, it won't get applause, but it's the dividing line between reactive minds and calm masters. Because once you truly face what's inside, nothing outside has power over you anymore. You don't become powerful by feeling nothing. You become powerful by understanding everything you feel. Let's clear up a common misunderstanding. Emotional intelligence is not the absence of emotion. It's the ability to understand, direct, and master your emotions before they master you. This is where so many people get it wrong. They think being stoic means being numb. They think emotional control means emotional suppression. They assume peace comes from ignoring your feelings. But that's not Stoicism. That's emotional avoidance. True Stoicism and true strength isn't about silencing your emotions. It's about understanding them so clearly that you are no longer enslaved by them. As Aristotle put it, anyone can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right reason, and in the right ways, that is not easy. That's right, there is emotional intelligence, and in today's world, it's one of the rarest superpowers. Why? Because, let's be honest, most people aren't emotionally resilient. They're emotionally fragile. And here's the twist. It's not because they feel too deeply. It's because they don't feel deeply at all. They don't sit with emotions. They don't explore them. They don't ask, what is this feeling here to teach me? Instead, they react. They project. They panic. They lash out. And then, when the damage is done, they blame the world around them for a storm that started within. They think yelling is strength. They believe cold silence equals control. They confuse emotional shutdown with self-discipline. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that real power doesn't come from loud reactions. It comes from quiet clarity. True power is when you can say, yes, I feel something, but no, I don't have to act on it immediately. That is self-mastery. That is freedom, because what most people call being real is often just emotional lack of discipline. You want to be emotionally stronger? Then train your emotions the way you train your body. You go to the gym to build muscle, right? You don't expect to get strong by thinking about it. You don't build endurance just by reading about it. You build it through resistance, through effort and repetition. Emotions work the same way. Every time something triggers you and you choose to pause instead of react, every time you feel the urge to lash out but choose to reflect instead, every time you breathe through discomfort rather than act blindly, you are building emotional muscle, and just like physical muscle, it grows stronger with consistent training. It begins with small things. Someone says something rude to you, don't snap. Someone disrespects you, you respond with clarity, not chaos. Life throws you a curveball, you adjust. You don't collapse. These small acts of restraint, of conscious, deliberate choice. That's how you train your mind to stay steady under pressure. That's not weakness. That's discipline. And in a world addicted to emotional drama, discipline is rare. Discipline is divine. The difference between reacting and responding is the line that defines inner power. Let's draw that line clearly. Reacting is automatic. Responding is intentional. Reacting is fueled by ego, fear, and pride. Responding is guided by wisdom, clarity, and purpose. Reaction leads to conflict. Response creates peace. And here's the hard truth. You will never find peace if your emotions are constantly at the mercy of other people. Because when your mood depends on how others treat you, you are giving them your power freely. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You always have the option of having no opinion. Things themselves have no hold on the soul." That is emotional sovereignty. That is inner peace by design, not by accident. In the next chapter, we'll go deeper. Because understanding emotional intelligence is one thing, but activating it requires a critical skill, the pause. That tiny moment between stimulus and response. That invisible second where everything can either fall apart or transform. Between stimulus and response lies your freedom. Life doesn't break you. Your lack of pause does. Someone insults you, you snap. Someone ignores you, you spiral. Someone questions you, you over-explain, defend, or shut down. That moment of reaction feels automatic, doesn't it? Like you didn't even have a choice. But that's the illusion, because you did have a choice. You just didn't use it. The Stoics understood something long before neuroscience ever confirmed it. Between what happens and how you respond, there is always a space. And in that space lies all your power. That space is called the pause. And if you master the pause, you master your life. But here's the problem. Most people never use that space. Modern life trains us to react instantly. See a post, respond, get a message, reply, feel discomfort, escape it. Hear something offensive, fire back. We live in a reaction economy where speed is rewarded, but reflection is forgotten. But no one tells you this. The faster you react, the easier you are to control. The more you pause, the more you own your response. Because reactivity is predictable, but clarity is powerful, and it terrifies manipulators. Think back to the last time someone triggered you. If you had paused just 2 seconds, you would have seen things differently, because the pause gives you something reaction never will. The space to ask, is this really about me? Am I reacting to truth or to a story I've created in my mind? Now, let's go even deeper. Let's talk about what happens within that pause, and why it matters more than you think. Ask yourself, in that moment, does this even deserve my energy? Will this still matter in 5 hours or 5 years? That's not weakness, that's mental clarity. And in a world engineered to keep you reactive, outraged, and emotionally on edge, clarity is an act of rebellion. While the Stoics practiced this thousands of years ago, modern neuroscience has only recently caught up with what they instinctively understood. Here's the science. The amygdala, emotional primal part of your brain's the first to respond when you perceive a threat. It reacts instantly, irrationally. It's what makes you flinch, panic, yell, or lash out without thinking. But just a second later, your prefrontal cortex, the rational, wise part of your brain, comes online. That's the voice of reason. The part that says, hold on, maybe this isn't what it seems. The Stoics didn't have words like amygdala or prefrontal cortex, but they lived the method. Pause long enough for reason to rise before emotion runs wild. Marcus Aurelius put it perfectly. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That power to revoke, that is the pause. That is your superpower. Let's be clear, the pause is not weakness. It is not backing down. It's not passivity. It is precision. It is mastery. The pause is you stepping back, not to run away, but to zoom out. To choose to act from wisdom, not from ego. When someone disrespects you and you pause, you disarm them without saying a word. You disrupt the pattern. You confuse them because they expected a reaction. They fed on your reactivity. They depended on it. But when you pause and do not react, you show them something rare. You show them a person who cannot be moved from the outside. And that kind of power, it's not only rare, it's respected. It's unshakable. Each time you pause, you're not just avoiding conflict. You're building the person you're becoming. You're telling your nervous system, we are no longer ruled by fear. We are no longer slaves to impulse. We choose how we respond. And slowly, the version of you that was reactive, defensive, always triggered, begins to dissolve, replaced by someone clearer, someone more grounded, more calm, more in control. The pause isn't just a tactic, it's real-time transformation. And here's the secret no one tells you. You don't have to react to everything. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. All you need is one conscious breath. Just 1 second of awareness. That's the space where chaos ends and clarity begins. Because when you pause, truly pause, you give yourself the chance to return to who you are, instead of becoming what the world tries to make you. But once you've found that inner calm, here comes the next challenge. How do you protect it? How do you keep people, noise, and pressure from storming into your peace and dragging you back into reactivity? That's what we'll explore next. In the next chapter, we uncover the quiet power of psychological boundaries. Why protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's survival. Your peace is sacred. And the truth is, not everyone deserves access to it. Yes, you've learned how to pause. You've learned how to take back emotional control. But here's the part most people never realize. If you don't set clear boundaries, you will constantly be at war with people who don't even know they're hurting you. Because the moment you create peace, the world intentionally or not will try to disturb it. They'll interrupt it, disrespect it, demand explanations for why you're no longer reacting, why you've stopped engaging, why you've stopped endlessly explaining yourself. And if you're not mindful, they'll pull you right back into their chaos. That's why psychological boundaries are not optional. They're essential, not as walls to block people out, but as filters to determine who gets to come in and under what conditions. So, what exactly are psychological boundaries? They're not rules you shout. They're not physical lines on the ground. They're internal standards, quiet, firm, and deeply rooted. A psychological boundary is the invisible. Now it's time to define those boundaries clearly and understand why without them, peace will always be at risk. A psychological boundary is a quiet shield. A shield that says, I don't explain myself to people who twist my words. I don't argue with those who are committed to misunderstanding me. I don't give my energy to conversations that drain me. It's also the quiet decision that I will not absorb moods, guilt, or shame that does not belong to me. Boundaries are decisions made in advance about how much access the world is allowed into your mind. Without boundaries, you become emotionally porous, like a sponge absorbing everyone's stress, expectations, opinions, and chaos. But with boundaries, you are not cold, you are clear, you are not harsh, you are discerning. You don't have to block everyone, you just have to stop offering front row seats to your inner world. Let's be honest, have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling more confused than when it began? Have you ever said yes just to keep the peace and later resented it? Have you ever tried to fix someone else's feelings while your own were falling apart? That's not kindness, that's boundary erosion. And when your boundaries are weak, you start dissolving into other people. You lose sight of your own wants. You over-explain things that don't need defending. You tolerate things you once swore you'd never accept. Before long, you feel drained, resentful, and quietly burned out. Not because the world is too loud, but because your boundaries were too quiet. Strong boundaries equals inner strength. The Stoics may not have used the word boundaries, but they lived them in every principle they taught. Care for yourself. Control what you can. Let go of what you can't. Don't concern yourself with the opinions of the unwise. That's a boundary. Marcus Aurelius didn't argue with fools. Epictetus didn't beg for validation. They drew clear lines between what belonged inside there. Solon did not, and you must do the same. Because emotional intelligence without boundaries is constantly under siege. Self-mastery without protection will always be attacked. It's like building a peaceful garden and leaving the gate wide open for every storm, every stranger. Every reckless thought to enter. Peace without protection is simply vulnerability, waiting to be violated. Boundaries are not about locking people out. They're about keeping yourself in. The goal is not isolation. The goal is intentional connection. You don't shut people out. You simply protect your mental bandwidth, your energy, focus, and peace, so you can give your best to what truly matters. And when someone crosses that line, you don't scream, you don't argue. You simply step back, calmly, firmly, without guilt. Because the highest form of self-respect is this: refusing to trade your peace for the sake of keeping a connection. If someone cannot respect your silence, your standards, or your clarity, they are not rejecting you. They are revealing themselves. And your job is not to fix them. Your job is to protect what you've built within. In the next chapter, we'll take this one step further, because once you've learned to guard your peace, you must also learn how to let go of what threatens it, without guilt, without drama, and without regret. We'll explore the cost of being emotionally attached to everything, because most people today are entangled with everything around them. A stranger's glance ruins their mood. A delayed text sends them spiraling. A disagreement becomes a personal attack. A breakup becomes an identity crisis. Why? Because they've never learned the power of detachment. You must learn that not everything deserves your reaction. That's where detachment comes in, the art of releasing what no longer serves your inner balance. Millions of people today build their sense of identity on a shaky foundation, external validation. So when the world shakes, they shake too. But the Stoics knew better. They understood one essential truth. If something can be taken from you, it was never truly yours. And if something can disturb your peace, it owns you. Whenever you cling to outcomes, people, or opinions, you silently hand over your emotional power. Detachment is how you take that power back. It's the inner decision that says, this matters, but not more than my peace. Yes, this hurts, but it doesn't define me. It happened, but I choose how long I carry it. This isn't emotional numbness. It's emotional discipline. Picture this. You walk into a tense room. People are arguing. The energy is thick. The old you might instantly absorb the chaos, feel defensive, take sides, get emotionally drained. But the wiser you, the one who has learned detachment, simply notices it. You observe without absorbing. You see the storm, but don't become it. You don't carry what isn't yours. You don't let someone else's chaos destroy your inner calm. Because here's the truth. Not every emotional wave requires you to surf it. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is stay still. And that's what makes the emotionally detached person so powerful. They can't be baited, provoked, or emotionally hijacked. Detachment is how you reclaim energy for what actually matters. Let's be honest. Most of your energy doesn't go toward your goals, your growth, or your peace. It leaks into overthinking what someone meant, checking who viewed your story, replaying old arguments, or trying to change people who never asked to be changed. That's emotional leakage. Detachment is the seal. It's the shift that says, I'm done pouring energy into things that don't pour anything back into me. You stop chasing closure from people who gave you chaos. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight. You don't lose your sensitivity. You gain discernment. And that is clarity. Detachment is not the end, it's the beginning. The Stoics didn't teach detachment as an escape. They taught it as a gateway. The entrance to a life lived on your own terms. Because once you stop gripping everything so tightly, your hands are free to build something that lasts. You no longer need to be liked, understood, or agreed with. You don't need every door to stay open. You don't need to sit at every table. You simply sit where your soul feels peace, even if it means sitting alone. That's not arrogance, that's sovereignty. That's what it means to walk through fire without letting the flames define you. But here comes the next challenge. Once you've learned to detach, how do you respond to what no longer deserves your energy? How do you protect your calm with silence? Because in a world addicted to noise, silence is rebellion. People expect a reaction. They want you to explain, argue, defend. They feed off your emotions. It gives them a sense of power. So what happens when you give them nothing? No outrage, no defense, no explanation. Just calm, poised, grounded silence. Suddenly, the entire game changes. They can't predict you. They can't manipulate you. They can't trigger you. Because silence, when chosen with intention, is not absence. It's dominance. When you say to yourself, this situation doesn't deserve a piece of me. My energy is far too valuable to waste on nonsense. You're not just walking away from drama. You're engaging in a subtle form of psychological warfare that leaves your opponents powerless. Why? Because silence forces others to sit with their own thoughts. And truth be told, most people can't handle that. But let's be very clear, strategic silence is not emotional suppression. It's not about bottling up your pain, your truth, or your anger. It's about choosing the right moment. It's about recognizing that not every battle is worth fighting. As Epictetus once said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. So when someone insults you, disrespects you, or tries to bait you into an emotional reaction, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, is this truly worth disturbing my peace? Almost every time, the answer is no. And in those moments, silence becomes more than a tactic. It becomes a sign of deep self-respect. You don't remain quiet because you have nothing to say. You stay silent because what you could say is not worth losing your inner stillness over. That's what emotional discipline looks like. That's the essence of a Stoic mind. So what does silence look like in action? Someone gossips about you. Let their words die in their own mouth. Someone criticizes you in public. You don't argue, you keep moving. Someone ghosts you. You don't beg, you redirect your focus. Someone yells. You hold eye contact, breathe deeply, and stay composed. That's not passivity. That's intentional restraint. It's a quiet reminder that not everything deserves your voice. Not everyone has earned your energy. Not every insult needs a reply. Every time you respond to chaos, you feed it. Every time you choose silence, you starve it. And eventually, it dies on its own. When you let your silence speak, the world begins to listen more closely. Why do the strongest minds speak the least? Because the more reactive you are, the more predictable you become. And the more predictable you are, the easier it is for others to control you. But silence makes you unreadable, and unreadable people are untouchable. You don't show your hand. You don't reveal your wounds. You don't perform for attention. You walk away, not because you lost, but because you refuse to lose yourself trying to win. You become a mystery in a world that overshares, a calm presence in a society that performs rage, a sharp mind in a culture that values noise over wisdom, and people notice. They feel your energy even when you don't say a word. That's not detachment. That's earned authority. That's inner power translated into outer discipline. And in the final chapter, we'll bring everything full circle. Because once you've learned how to pause, protect your boundaries, detach from emotional chaos, and remain silent when needed, you are no longer the same person. You are no longer ruled by the external world. You've become someone who rules your inner world. You'll notice a shift, quiet, subtle, yet powerful. You no longer flinch at someone's tone. You don't spiral from a delayed message. You don't lose sleep over what someone said or didn't say. You no longer hand out pieces of your peace just to feel seen. You've changed. You're not numb. You're not cold. You're just no longer owned by the things that once controlled you. That's not apathy. That's evolution. From reaction to response. You may have started this journey thinking you had to suppress your emotions. That strength meant silence. That detachment meant shutting people out. But now you know the truth. True strength is the ability to feel deeply without reacting blindly, to observe your emotions, even the intense ones, and choose your response with intention. That's what it means to rise above the noise. You pause, you reflect, you choose. And in that moment, you become untouchable. Bon Ji Noi. Once you enter that space of stillness, something profound begins to unfold. You're no longer reacting on impulse. You're responding with purpose, with clarity, and with power, as Marcus Aurelius once wrote. The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. You may not control the world, but you do control who and what gets access to your inner peace. This is the lesson most people never learn. You will never control how others behave. They'll be loud, they'll be unfair, they'll be inconsistent. They'll misjudge you, misunderstand you, and mistreat you. But none of that has the power to define you, unless you grant it permission. Now you understand boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. Detachment isn't absence, it's alignment. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategic clarity. Reactivity isn't just draining, it's a form of enslavement. You've built a new internal operating system, one that no longer runs on validation, reactivity, or fear. You've unplugged the emotional control panel from your chest. No one gets to press your buttons anymore. That's freedom. That's Stoicism in motion. And yes, people will notice you've changed. They'll say, "You've changed. You seem cold now. You don't care anymore." But what they don't realize is this: you didn't stop caring. You just stopped sacrificing yourself in the name of caring. You've come to understand that not every fire is yours to put out. You don't owe anyone your peace to keep the connection warm. Maturity is knowing when to engage and when to walk away gracefully. The old you were triggered by everything. The new you let most things pass right through, like wind through open space. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you finally matter to yourself. The new you don't panic, you don't chase, you don't need to prove anything. You sit, you breathe, you choose. When chaos knocks, you open the door with composure. When ego baits you, you smile and stay grounded. When disrespect arrives, you don't escalate, you elevate. That is emotional intelligence. That is spiritual discipline. That is self-mastery in action. The Stoics were never emotionless. They were emotionally wise. And now, so are you. You've walked through the fire, not to become fireproof, but to stay calm within the flames. You've stopped being reactive. You've started becoming unshakable. You're no longer playing defense. You're moving with intention. And now your silence speaks louder than anyone else's noise. So what happens next? You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to get it right every time. But you do have a new standard. I no longer react like I used to, because I am no longer who I used to be. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of a life built from the inside out. A life where you lead yourself before you lead anything else. A life where peace isn't something you chase. It's something you protect. Now you understand. No one can trigger you once you've mastered the space where your power lives. You didn't come this far to remain the same. You came to unlearn old patterns, reclaim your energy, and stop being controlled by everything outside of you. Now, you've stepped into a new kind of power, not loud, not flashy, not dependent on anyone's approval, but rooted, quiet, unshakable. You've learned how to pause instead of react. Guard your peace like it's sacred. Detach without guilt. Let silence speak louder than emotion. Walk away without needing to prove anything. This is not about becoming cold. This is about becoming clear. Clear about who you are, what matters, and what no longer deserves a seat at the table of your attention. Because once you master your inner response, the world outside loses its grip on you. That's Stoicism in action. That's what it means to walk the quiet path with your head high, your mind sharp, and your soul intact. And if this journey spoke to you, if it awakened something deep within, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, not for the algorithm, but as a promise to yourself. I choose peace over performance. Subscribe to Life Through Stoicism to keep walking this path, where ancient wisdom meets modern self-mastery, and calm becomes a way of life. And in the comments, tell us, what's the one trigger you're taking your power back from starting? Today your story might be the spark that someone else needs. Until next time, stay grounded, stay quiet, and above all, stay untouchable.